Hey, it's Jared. This is my iPad M1. This is the iPad Pro. I just ordered the iPad M2 Pro that was just released today, and it will be arriving next week. So I'm going to put it through some tests, but I wanted to talk about whether or not it's a worthwhile upgrade, because Apple didn't do anything but just soft launch this. There was a press release, not a whole lot there that looks different. We've got the XDR display still. We've got the same size iPad. It looks exactly the same as the last model. So what actually is different? Well, I wanted to talk about the few things that I was able to find that are different, and then I'll come back later and do a review comparison between the two, because I don't think that this jump from an M1 iPad to an M2 iPad Pro is going to make that big of a difference for most people. Might make a difference for me because I do a lot of photo editing and sometimes a little bit of video editing, but I don't even know if it's going to be that big of a difference for me. So let's talk about the differences. Well, the differences are the M1 and the M2 chip. Obviously, Apple released the M2 chip, and now it is coming to the iPad Pro, and that is the biggest jump. There are some changes there in the performance, obviously, as we go from M1 to M2. We're getting increased performance overall. We're going to get increased performance in computational and also in the graphics realm of the iPad Pro. And the iPad Pro M1 was already really fantastic. So I'm sure there are going to be improvements, but I don't necessarily know if we're going to be able to utilize those improvements. The iPad Pro M1 was already substantially overpowered for most of the things that people are going to do with an iPad. Now, I was hoping, and actually did a video about this quite a while ago, about the potential of Mac OS coming to an iPad, because it's running an M1 chip, or it was running an M1 chip, and Mac runs an M1 chip. But that didn't happen, and they didn't bring software over either that might make the iPad Pro a little more pro. For example, being able to run something like Final Cut Pro on an iPad. That didn't happen. So now we're moving on to the M2 iPad Pro with more performance, and it makes sense that they're going to, every year or so bring each device into a new chip. That is what they've done with the iPhone, and it is now what they're doing with their own Apple Silicon. So the other differences that I found interesting, but I don't know if they're going to be super useful for really any of us, unless it's specific use cases, is this new feature called Apple Pencil Hover. This is the next iteration in responsiveness for the Apple Pencil 2. The Apple Pencil 2 is already great and has just industry-leading responsiveness, and so I didn't know how they would really improve upon that. However, with the M2, the Apple Pencil 2 now detects itself being closer to the screen. So the Apple Pencil 2, as it comes close to the screen, starts to detect itself, and it detects more angles, and so that actual feel that you get from using an Apple Pencil on the display is going to be even more realistic in comparison to what you would experience if you were using paper and pencils or pens or whatever it is, actual media. So that's interesting, and I'll be interested to see what artists have to say about that, because I'm not one. I usually just use my Apple Pencil to take notes, and so I don't think that I'm going to feel much of a difference there. But Apple Pencil Hover, of course, it's got to have a name, may be something that is an improvement for those who are really utilizing the Apple Pencil to its fullest extent. The M2 iPad is going to be able to capture ProRes video like the iPhone Pro, the 13 Pro, the 14 Pro captured ProRes video, and so the iPad M2 is going to be able to do that as well. It says that it has an encode and decode engine for ProRes in the M2, so I'm assuming that we should be able to take ProRes video. For those that shoot ProRes video or convert to ProRes because you're a video editor, you may be able to utilize that on the M2 iPad. And so that is something that they would need if they would please ever bring Final Cut Pro to the iPad Pro or to iPad OS, or perhaps even other video editing software. They would need that type of functionality in order to support the greater film industry out there. Most of us that are shooting in some form of a codec that may be ProRes or another, ProRes being Apple's codec, and so it does support that in both encoding and decoding. So that goes beyond what the camera just needs to capture and play back, I hope. So I hope that there's going to be some improved video editing features that would come to the iPad, because I think as a content creation device for social media, TikToks, Instagram Reels, stuff like that, the iPad could be an amazing device for creating that type of content if it had more robust video editing features. So talking about photos, there's of course photo capture and video capture. There's the HDR options, and in video, HDR is almost a default on the iPhone and the iPad. Smart HDR4 is coming to the iPad M2 just as it did to the iPhone 14 Pro Max, and so we've got Smart HDR, and then we have Wi-Fi 6E. So for those of you that have a home or business network that is Wi-Fi 6E enabled, which is the fastest right now apparently and the best, I have a Wi-Fi 6E mesh network in my home, and so the M2 iPad Pro will be able to work with that, whereas the M1 just has Wi-Fi 6. So 6E being the next iteration there, and the M2 supports it. So other than that, I really wasn't able to find anything in the spec sheet. Nothing about improved battery life, increased anything. The frame, the size, the dimensions of the iPad Pro M2 are all going to be the same. Everything's going to be the same. I don't even know if there's a need to buy another, if you were going to get the keyboard, the Magic Keyboard, if you would need to buy another one. You might actually just be able to use the same one. I went ahead and ordered it just so that I can see if there is a difference, because the difference between the iPad Pro that came out right before the M1 and the M1 keyboard, Magic Keyboard, there was a slight difference, very slight difference, not much though. I made a video about that a while back to help people save money on unnecessary purchases. So that's my video here, really, is just what's the difference between these. For those of you like me who are quick to go to Apple and maybe click that buy now button and order something that may or may not have any actual utility, that's why I wanted to come here today on the launch day of the M2 iPad Pro and talk about what the differences are, because they are few, and I feel like this is more like an M1S model, although it's getting the M2 chip. There is performance increases there. Whether or not it's worth to you, I don't really know. I think if you're jumping from an older version of an iPad Pro into the M line, you would want to go straight to the M2, of course, but I'm sure there will be retailers with the M1 going on sale as well. I tried to see what the trade-in value of my M1 was, and it's only $500, which is kind of a bummer. iPads definitely don't have the resale value of an iPhone and the trade-in value with Apple as an iPhone does. So that's going to do it for this video. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Do you find any thoughts or utility in that M2 that I might be missing? Let's talk about it down below. We'll see you soon. Thanks for watching.